Well, hello everybody and welcome. We are Lizzie and Justin from Third Space, and this is another week of Turning Towards Life. Good morning, Lizzie. Good morning, me. Welcome everybody, maybe morning or nighttime, who knows what and when you're with us. We know that many of you are with us in our Facebook group, on podcasts, on YouTube, on our Turning Towards Life website, and you're all enormously and very gladly and wholeheartedly welcome with us. We're going to do, Lizzie, what we do every week and have done for 370 something weeks, which is to, in a moment, begin with a source, a piece of writing that you've found for us, Lizzie, which is like a wellspring or a trailhead or the start of a river which flows through this conversation, and who knows where it will take us. But one of the things that we do know is that it always takes us somewhere very rich and very life-giving. And I suppose that's, for me, one of the points of having this conversation at all, is to find our way really into life-giving conversation that keeps us turning towards our lives rather than away from our lives. So I'm very glad that you found something really stretching for us to talk about today from Rainer Maria Rilke. And last thing for me to say before I hand over to you to say hello and talk to us about this source as well, is to all of you who are with us. We are so very glad that you're with us. Some of you have been alongside us for more than 7 years, and many of you have found your way to us much more recently. And I just want to express our appreciation for all of you for doing that. And also to say, if you would like us in your inbox each week, head over to turningtowards.life, and there's a way you can subscribe to our weekly email, so you'll get this conversation and the source directly to you. And if you'd like to support us, you can support us there too. We've had some wonderful offerings of support there this week, for which we're very grateful and very touched as well. So that's it, Lizzie. I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Justin. So this source is by the extraordinary Rainer Maria Rilke, who, in the reading of this, I was thinking, my goodness, how did this person birth these words, this combination of words? I'm just in awe. And I've been wondering this week, Justin, about how we read things. And one of the ways that I've been thinking about reading things is that it's a way to get to know the person who wrote it. And so I kind of read this with that in my mind, rather than, oh, what's this poem about? What's it going to give me? But who is Rainer Maria Rilke that he would write this? And it's quite something to wonder about that. So this is quite long. It's very, for me, discombobulating, confusing, but I couldn't stop reading it over and over again. And that was really interesting to me. I didn't read it and think, I know exactly what this is saying or something. I read it and thought, oh, I think this is really important. And some pieces I could kind of find my thread with, and other pieces I thought, I don't know what's going on here. But it felt so compelling, and like I had to keep looking at it, that it became then a yes to bring as a source for us here. So I guess the title of it, I don't even know if it's the right title, so I think it's an excerpt from somewhere of one of Rainer Rilke's books, but it's called Fear of the Inexplicable. And I'm going to begin reading. But fear of the inexplicable has not alone impoverished the existence of the individual. The relationship between one human being and another has also been cramped by it. As though it had been lifted out of the riverbed of endless possibilities and set down in a fallow spot on the bank to which nothing happens. For it is not inertia alone that is responsible for human relationships repeating themselves from case to case, indescribably monotonous and unrenewed. It is shyness before any sort of new, unforeseeable experience with which one does not think oneself able to cope. But only someone who is ready for everything, who excludes nothing, not even the most enigmatical, will live the relation to another as something alive, and will himself draw exhaustively from his own existence. For if we think of this existence of the individual as a larger or smaller room, it appears evident that most people learn to know only a corner of their room, a place by the window, a strip of the floor on which they walk up and down. Thus they have a certain security. And yet that dangerous insecurity is so much more human, which drives the prisoners in Poe's stories to feel out the shapes of their horrible dungeons and not be strangers to the unspeakable terror of their abode. We, however, are not prisoners. No traps or snares are set about us, and there is nothing which should intimidate or worry us. We are set down in life as in the element to which we best correspond. And over above this, we have, through thousands of years of accommodation, become so like this life that when we hold still, we are, through a happy mimicry, scarcely to be distinguished from all that surrounds us. We have no reason to mistrust our world, for it is not against us. Has its terrors, they are our terrors. Has its abuses, those abuses belong to us. Dangers at hand, we must try to love them. And only we arrange our life according to that principle, and if only we arrange our life according to that principle which counsels us that we must always hold to the difficult, then that which now still seems to us the most alien will become what we most trust and most find most faithful. How should we be able to forget those ancient myths about dragons that at the last moment turn into princesses? Perhaps all the dragons of our lives are princesses who are only wanting to see us once beautiful and brave. Perhaps everything terrible in its deepest being is something helpless that wants help from us.
This is really marvellous, Lizzie, and I'm going to read a little bit of each of the first two paragraphs and then the third paragraph. It's not inertia alone that is responsible for human relationships repeating themselves from case to case, indescribably monotonous and unrenewed. It is shyness before any sort of new, unforeseeable experience with which one does not think oneself able to cope. We are not prisoners. No traps or snares are set about us. There's nothing which should intimidate or worry us. We are set down in life as in the element to which we best correspond, and over and above this, we have, through thousands of years of accommodation, become so like this life that when we hold still, we are, through a happy mimicry, scarcely to be distinguished from all that surrounds us. We have no reason to mistrust our world, for it is not against us. Has it terrors? They are our terrors. Has it abuses? Those abuses belong to us. And dangers at hand, we must try to love them. And if only we arrange our life according to that principle, which counsels us that we must always hold to the difficult, then that which now still seems to us the most alien will become what we trust and find most faithful. How should we be able to forget those ancient myths about dragons that at the last moment turn into princesses? Perhaps all the dragons of our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us once beautiful and brave. Perhaps everything terrible is in its deepest being something helpless that wants help from us.
My goodness, it's a big experience to feel all of this and to begin to try and process it bit by bit. And have that feeling, Justin, that maybe this should be like a 4-day experience or something. And I really appreciate the bits that you picked out to read for the second time. As you were reading, what really moved me was the encouragement and the truth-telling feeling of holding to the difficult. And I think me, along probably with lots of others, there is a real kind of ordinary habitual preference for things not to be difficult. And they are difficult. I don't experience life as a skip in the park or something, although skips in the park might happen in the wider picture of it all. there is difficulty, and being a human being isn't easy. It's not simple. It's a complex experience being a human, and there is most certainly difficulty in it. I think for everyone I've ever spoken to, actually, I can say that's true. Like I've never met a human that's gone, oh my gosh, this is just everything is great and everything is easy all the time. So I think it's pretty bog standard that we're all in something difficult lots of the time. And Rainer Maria Rilke saying, if we arranged our lives according to the principle which counsels us that we must always hold to the difficult, and that enables what seems most alien to then become most trustworthy and most faithful to us. That whole, like, I can feel all of the difficulty as an invitation, as a possibility, rather than something that needs to be removed. And of course, it can't be removed. It won't be removed. I've tried. It doesn't work. I can't make everything okay. So even when there's lots of okayness, there is lots of unokayness. And all we need to do, if you know, to look beyond the four walls of our home, if we've only lived in a small strip that we walk up and down upon, the world isn't okay. And so what does holding to the difficult mean? What is that principle of holding to the difficult? And the fact that that could mean the encountering of what we find to be most faithful and that we could trust the most feels very, very true to me. And like that could be a principle that walks us home forever. That inside all of these dragons, inside all of these moments of helplessness, there lies what's most trustworthy and most faithful. And that someone wrote this, that is an invitation that we can take as human beings. And it feels really human to accept that invitation and to feel the reality of that in our lives feels very, very important, like central to being a human being.
Oh, this really is the most extraordinary piece of writing, Lizzie. And the first two paragraphs, before I respond to what you've just said, it seems to me it's really important to include the first two paragraphs. The first which says, I think, have you noticed how monotonous we can make our relationships to one another? And that we make our relationships to one another monotonous because we're afraid of encountering what we don't understand. We'd rather make our lives very small and very familiar than we would make them adventurous into the unknown. And we'd rather have our relationships be repetitive than we would have them unfold into what we yet cannot understand in ourselves and in other people. That's part one. And then part two, the second paragraph, then extends it and says, you know what, we're not prisoners. We could easily become prisoners. We could pace up the same little strip of floorboard again and again and again and again, and we do very often, treading this little patch because we're very, very frightened of what might be in the dark corner. But that makes us prisoners of our lives. So now what? And there we launch into paragraph 3 and everything you've begun to say. The thing that really struck me about picking up on what you were talking about, facing into difficulty and danger and what we find unwelcome in the world, its terrors and its abuses and its dangers, is this claim that Rilke makes that I think is really worth emphasizing, which is that we're not separate from life, we're not different from life. We might think that we can hold ourselves safe by sort of pretending to ourselves that there's life out there and then there's me and I'm somehow separate from it. So if I just go up and down this little patch of floor again and again, keep myself monotonous, that somehow what's outside me isn't me. And he's saying, no, we're all the same stuff. We have been around for millennia. We were born from this life. We are part of this life. So everything that happens and everything that we could experience is part of us. And so our what's the word? The call on us is to trust that we have within us what it takes to respond. And I love this language, to be both at once, to be both beautiful and brave in our lives, that life is waiting for us to do that. And it's not that, I can see in what Rilke's writing, that it's not that he's making some kind of simplistic or naive promise that somehow if you turn towards what's difficult, it will all be okay and no longer difficult. Nowhere does he say that. What he does say is that what's most difficult is an opportunity for us to bring ourselves, and that we can bring ourselves in a way that's harmonious with life itself. And for me, that's both enormously hope-making. It's in the definition of hope that we've sometimes talked about before, that hope isn't actually in how things turn out. Hope is knowing that we humans can bring ourselves well and wisely and with care and with depth and with attention. That's what we're here to do. And things will turn out the way that they turn out. Some horrors and terrors and dangers cannot be addressed, but they can bring out what is most kind in us and what is most loving and what is most creative and what is most flexible and what is most relational and what is most inclusive and it can bring out all of those virtues. And as Rilke says near the end, many of the things that appear to be dragons turn out to be princesses when we bring ourselves in that way. That life is waiting for us to bring ourselves to what is difficult in the world, and for that to be full of a kind of gift, not the gift of safety, not the gift of predictability, not the gift of even knowing what on earth is going on, but the gift of finding ourselves in our fullness where we can. And you and I, Lizzie, have been talking over the last few days about human goodness and about all the difficulties in the world. And I think this is such a wonderful response to that question, because it's so easy to say, to get into simplistic things like to say, well, I really trust in the essential goodness of human beings. And in doing so, to turn away from all the horrors and abuses and terrors we inflict upon one another, as if somehow we were pretending that those weren't true. And quite the opposite. Rilke's faithfulness here is, we have within us the capacity to say yes to life, whatever is happening. To turn into life whatever is happening if we will take it, and to bring the innate creativity that life is to bear to life, whatever is happening. And when we do that, that's when we reveal the excellence, the goodness, the capacity of human beings to be a force for life, and a force for care, and a force for love, and maybe where I go for now with that is that, in a way, what Rilke's pointing out is that so many of the terrors and abuses that we humans inflict upon one another are the ones that happen when we turn away from this very capacity. When we forget that we have the capacity to turn towards and to find within ourselves virtues that can be brought, that's when we either create or participate in or inadvertently let happen. I'm quoting from him again, the terrors, the abuses, and the dangers which we could play a part in.
As you're talking, Justin, I'm feeling this big kind of possibility emerging of, you said the word virtue, and I'm wondering about how the importance of our own healing comes into this. Because if I'm becoming freer in myself, letting go of and healing any wounds that I have inside of me, in whatever work I'm doing on the inside of me, the gentle work of turning towards all the different parts of me that have all the different hurts and difficulties, and treating those difficulties, as Rilke's inviting us to, as opportunities inside. When I'm in those situations that you're speaking about, Justin, where life is difficult and difficult things are happening, they become much more of a possibility for an opportunity for my virtues to come forth than an opportunity for my reactivity to come forth, or my anger to come forth, or my resentment to come forth. And that feels like a very compelling, curious invitation. You know, if I imagine myself in all the places where like really horrible things are going on, and I turn into like a horrible version of myself in response because it's so not okay, and I'm not being virtuous in response. And when I say virtuous, I mean I'm not really bringing my gifts. I'm not bringing my capacities and my capabilities to their fullest. I'm bringing more war. I'm bringing more of the same thing by being reactive. And so I'm feeling renewed kind of awareness of the importance of doing my own work to find peace inside of myself, to see all of the difficulties that I experience, all my reactivity, all my triggering, as an opportunity for healing, so that my gifts can be brought forth in response to the world, and that I could be this person who, what's the language that he uses, who draws on myself exhaustively, who exhaustively draws from my own existence in order to be in relationship with others and bring my gifts forth. So I'm really feeling that in this moment, and extremely grateful for these words and our conversation, and this feeling of a commitment to my work that I can do, that would have me be able to bring my gifts more fully to the world instead of my reactivity and my frustration, my resentment, or whatever. And Justin, one of the things that really helps me in that too is this line: we're set down in life as in the element to which we best correspond. Somehow, the saying of that, I don't even know how to say it, but it makes me feel like, oh, this is my environment. This is what I was made for, and it was made for me. I belong here. Whatever's happening is a human experience. Wherever I find myself belongs to humanness. And so nothing is beyond me. Like, it feels very empowering to know I'm welcome here, and this was made for me. This life was made for me, and I'm making this life, rather than I've been plonked here and it's like, whoa, this is not mine. I have that feeling often when life doesn't turn out the way that I want it to, that there must be some mistake here. There's a big mistake happening and I'm a victim of a mistake, which is a really different feeling than, oh, I've been set down in the environment to which I best correspond as a human, which is this world. And then what? So I feel really moved by that line and that welcome as a kind of prerequisite to being willing to face into the difficulty and bring my gifts.
I'm going to read that line again, Lizzie, and say to everyone who's with us, we will reproduce this text in the show notes and on our website and in the email, because it's really worth reading as well. Not just hearing us read it. We're set down in life as in the element to which we best correspond. And then he further goes, and over and above this, we have through thousands of years of accommodation, actually millions of years, become so like this life that when we hold still, we're scarcely to be distinguished from all that surrounds us. I think we've talked about this a few times before, maybe many times before, Lizzie. I think for many of us, it's really, really hard to feel that, because we live in a time where for the last, certainly maybe 150, 160 years, the predominant story about what it is to be a living something is that we're random accidents in a cold, dead universe. And the stories that we have about how life came about, the mechanistic stories, all start there. It's a cold, dead universe, and somehow, randomly and accidentally, here we are. And we're like aliens. And Rilke's saying that's completely the wrong way to understand it. We are born of this universe. It and us are the same stuff. So when we see one another and we see ourselves, why would we for a moment imagine that what we're in is different from us, is somehow separate from us? And in listening to you, I think what also really comes to me, you said when we're in difficulty, when we feel like we don't understand, when we're feeling overwhelmed by something, it's really easy for us to make more war where there's war, and to make more argument where there's argument, and to make more distrust where there's distrust. Because what happens is our bodies get activated, we get into some kind of running or fighting or freezing or something reactive. And when we're reactive in that way, we almost inevitably just add to the thing that's here. And that it takes a real kind of trust. The sense, I think, that if we were to, first of all, if we were to come back to ourselves and slow ourselves enough, that we might find that so much of what we need in order to be able to respond well is actually here in us already. It's not alien to us either. That there's a great source of wisdom and capacity that's right here in ourselves, and then it's also right here in one another. So the ones who we can have around us, who, when they can do the same, we can also draw together on a huge source of capacity and wisdom and understanding and care and creativity that's really within reach, and that we can respond. But what makes it difficult for us to do so, and gosh, it can be so difficult, is that we forget, and in our fear we contract away from life and get rigid and reactive. And I'm thinking about situations I've been in over the last year that I found very difficult, where I know it's been so easy to go, it's everyone else's fault, it's an impossible situation, to sort of separate myself by being self-righteous and being the one who knows, or being the one who's hard done by, the one who's having stuff done to me, or whatever it is. And sometimes some of those things are true, but more often, when I take up that stance, what it does is it makes me into a reactive perpetuator of exactly the thing that I so long would stop. And that's why I absolutely love this line that ends this piece, that I think is extraordinary. Perhaps everything terrible is, in its deepest being, something helpless that wants help from us. Perhaps everything terrible, and I'll just put a little parenthesis here, the very big things, but also the small things that we take to be terrible, like the thing you just said to me, or how confused I am, or whatever it is in its deepest being something helpless that wants help from us. And if we start to know ourselves as ones who belong in life, belong in a world that is not fundamentally against us, belong in a life that brought us forth ready to respond to both what is beautiful and what is terrible, then we have much more of a chance of coming back to our own capacities and going, okay, so this terrible thing, it's something helpless that wants help from me. Not for me to run from it, not for me to contract in the face of it, not to get self-righteous, not to make myself tiny or too big. That it's calling for me to bring myself. And here I think we have to then remember that we're not just minds, we're also bodies and hearts, and we're also in relationship, that we can gather ourselves fully and we can call on one another to do this. This is not something that any of us have to do alone. And the biggest source of our ongoing difficulty in the face of all of this is that we forget that we are the ones to do exactly this.
Goodness me, Justin, I'm having massive surges of deep appreciation for what's getting made between us in this conversation, for this source, for everyone that's in this conversation with us. It's very wonderful. And yeah, I'm marveling at how much I love what this piece of writing is. And in the beginning, I read it and thought, oh my gosh, I've got no idea what this is on about, and kept reading it and kept reading it and kept reading it. Being with you has revealed all of it to me. So I'm so now curious about what it really means to be in relationship about something, rather than, like you say, on our own with it. What is it to bring something into the space of relationship, and then the relationship and the conversation brings the thing itself alive in order to teach us what it has to teach us? And I'm really moved by that. And this is just really straightforward, obvious evidence of that being an extraordinary way to learn and to receive what's here to be learned and received. And how excellent, and how missing from any kind of education, formal education I ever received, was this. This didn't exist anywhere. And it's the way that I can really learn things, is to be in relationship to the source with another or others, and to feel what it brings alive in us. How amazing. So I want to thank you, Justin, for being the immediate experience of that now, and also thank you to everyone else for whom goodness knows what's getting born in their systems that actually is really part of the conversation too, even though we can't hear it with our ears. That is happening in life. So I want to thank everybody for being here, for sticking with us through the more complex sources that we bring, and for being in the conversation with us, and for trusting us enough to press play on the podcast or whatever to be here. It's extremely generous that anybody's listening, Justin, and thank goodness everyone's here with us. Thank goodness you're here with me, I'm here with you. This is what we do. How wonderful. I want to thank everyone for being here, and we'll be back next week with another source. Although we could just bring this one again and it would be a whole nother conversation, Justin. And we will see you again in a week's time. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Lizzie. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.